Welcome to episode 15 of Better Riding, brought to you by Bennetts and Honda Motorcycles UK. I'm Michael Mann from BikeSocial, and this is the series that brings you tips and advice that will make you better at riding your motorbike. It's as simple as that. Whether you're new to riding or whether you've been doing it daily for 50 years, we all want to be better at everything we do, right? And we all can be better. Joining me in this episode, as with all episodes, is professional motorbike coach Mark McVeigh. Now check this CV out. He's an experienced rider coach, an ex-MotoGP engineer, riding academy owner for over 20 years. He invented the Moto DNA rider training tech, and he's taught over 10,000 riders to be better, safer, smarter, and more confident. Here he is. Good day, Mark. How are you, sir?
G'day, Michael. Very well, thank you very much. I'm actually a lot older than I look. That's why I've done a few things with my life there. So just in case anybody's wondering.
It's a cracking CV, isn't it? I think you should have a little, a cap with it all listed on it.
Thanks. I'll think about that.
So, Mr. McVeigh, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so we're on about driver behaviours and how to enhance your risk awareness. And, we love a yarn, so I'll start with a bit of a story. The other week, we're coaching riders all the time. And last week we were in the twisties with a bunch of riders. And I missed it on camera, but we had an oncoming car drift across the white line kind of in front of us. And I thought, that's, there's no malice, just an oblivious driver. And my riders, they were composed. They quickly adjusted their speed and their position. But the real lesson, when we had a bit of a debrief, it wasn't in the throttle or the brake. It was in the perception. And, the truth is, many drivers, they don't perceive us, the riders, or worse, they do, but their brain kind of fails to process, what they have seen. And if you look at about 50% of motorbike crashes, they're with another vehicle. So it's worth understanding the common driver behaviors, that put us riders at risk. And then we can develop, riding strategies to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone watching here could probably make a list. In fact, if you're watching right now and you want to share a tale or two, do so in the comment section. But Mark, in your sort of professional opinion, what are the most dangerous driver behaviors for us motorcycle riders?
Well, yeah, there's a bunch of research, that we're always looking at research and trying to get good data, and we'll put those links in the video description. But of course, we can't talk about this without talking about SMIDSY, the sorry mate, I didn't see you. And essentially, the driver claims not to have seen the rider, resulting in a crash. And sometimes the bike can be hidden behind other vehicles or the A-pillar. But today we're going to talk about and focus on the driver's inattention and also their visual scanning errors. And that's a lot more complicated than, just wearing the high-vis vest and riding around with our lights on.
Mark, and perhaps do you want to break down SMIDSY a bit more?
Yeah, the first one we'll talk about is inattentional blindness. So motorbike crashes, when they involve another vehicle, the drivers fail to detect that vehicle, and it's not because they're hidden, but because the driver's brain doesn't register them. And this is a classic example of inattentional blindness, where the driver's brain essentially filters out what they're not expecting. So most drivers, they're looking for cars and trucks and not so much bikes. So the driver can be looking directly at us, at the rider, yet they fail to see us. And that's a real classic look but fail to see.
I imagine there's plenty of people out there who've experienced that as well. But so in that case, does motorbike movement help or certainly affect that SMIDSY?
100%. That's a kind of one of the really good ways to mitigate the risk. We've got another issue with motion camouflage, and that's a classic look but fail to see. And, the motorcycle can be approaching head on, but it appears stationary to the driver. And that's due to its small frontal area. And our visual system kind of likes lateral motion So if we don't have that lateral movement, it makes it hard for the drivers to gauge our speed or actually see us at all. So it's really important to understand.
Is there anything else that can cause this type of intentional blindness or SMIDSY, as we call it?
Yep, there is. There's another issue with saccadic masking, and that's another classic look but fail to see, and it's to do with our eyes. So our eyes, they don't actually pan smoothly. They jump in kind of rapid steps or saccades, and around each jump, the brain actually dampens out the world to a degree so it doesn't blur, and it creates these tiny kind of perceptual gaps, if you like, several times a second, and a motorbike can be in that gap. And then if you think about a driver, at a junction, if they're checking that it's safe to pull out, they're kind of whipping their head left and right, which kind of makes that even worse. So that's another classic, look but fail to say.
Saccadic is not a word I've come across before. But tell me, Mark, in your teachings and the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, what would you suggest that we as riders do to protect ourselves, like other than lateral movement? Is there anything else that you've kind of got up your sleeve?
It all sounds common sense when you kind of review it back, but the amount of riders that don't, they're kind of riding along oblivious to all these things. So yeah, we definitely kind of, we've been repeating the same thing for a long time, but you'll have heard ride like you're invisible, right? And that's such an important mindset to have. And the other thing is like to be ready, anticipate these things are likely to happen. And these days it's even worse, especially, approaching intersections, expect the worst, and manage your speed and your position. That's a really important part of it. Look for subtle clues, wheel movement or the car creeping forward. Give yourself space with that buffer zone. If you're worried, cover the brakes, get ready. That saves a lot of time. And then, of course, moving laterally or weaving within your lane, especially coming up to an intersection, that can definitely help mitigate, the motion camouflage, inattentional blindness, and the saccadic masking, if you like. Essentially, you can never trust the driver's eyes, only the wheels. Are they moving and in what direction?
So something I came across, someone told me a couple of years ago. It's only a couple of years ago. I mean, I've been riding for, 25 years or more. Yeah, a lot more, in fact. But only recently did I come across a tip where they said, look, on motorways, especially if you're in lane 3 and you've got a car in front of you, a vehicle in front of you that's not moving across, that lateral movement, I know we've spoken about it a lot, but that is something it triggers me now when when I'm in that position. I just move across and just try and get that. I don't flash my lights, but I try and move the bike so the headlight, if you're driving along, you see that thing in the background. But there's plenty of other driver behaviours that we should watch out for, I'm sure. And again, I'd invite our viewers to kind of make a list of the ones that they think of. But what have you got?
There's kind of like an epidemic, if you like, with distracted driving. And, looked at Road Safety GB, the recent report, they said that 50,000 drivers are using their mobile phone every day. 50,000 drivers a day are on their mobile phone while they're, that's crazy. So, the research shows, using your phone, it delays, your reactions, much like alcohol or drugs, and it can increase your reaction time, 30 to 50%. And obviously, we don't need crash data to understand, how dangerous this is for motorbike riders. So that's a big one.
It's really evident, isn't it? And unfortunately, a lot more common. 50,000, and that's crackers. And you can tell, can't you? You don't need to be. And it's part of the reason why I now, again, more recently, I tend to back away. I tend to leave much more of a gap than I used to. Maybe it's young person's naivety back in my younger days, but or maybe it's, now I'm in my mid-40s, I need to preserve myself a little bit better. But I certainly do leave much more of a gap between myself on a bike and whatever the vehicle is in front, because you never know what they're going to do, where they're going to weave, how they're going to be distracted, especially with the amount of distractions and available in modern day cars. Are there any strategies that you can think of or that you advise for riders to kind of avoid any of these situations or to keep our eyes peeled? And our noses as well, thinking about it. Because you know what? I don't know whether it's just the town where I live, but all of a sudden, over the last few years, again, there's been you generally get that waft of, maybe it's vapes and the popularity of vapes, or you tend to get the, because we're all we use all our senses, don't we, to help us ride, and it's not just about vision, it's a lot about your ears and your nose as well, because you can certainly smell, whether you're in the countryside, or whether you're following vehicles that do smoke.
It's I mean, the things to look out for, the driver's head movement, are they looking down? That's a classic one. It's actually not that hard to spot them. If they're not they're not looking ahead at where they're going, and their head's moving around and they're distracted, weaving in their line, that's another good one. And I use my peripheral vision to kind of watch between the car's sort of wheel and the white line. You don't even have to look at that directly, and you can see, that weaving. And, don't be shy using your horn. Often I'll just maybe not blast them, although they deserve to be blasted on the horn and worse. But, to try and, not start a fight, I might sort of go beep, beep, hey, mate, you know what I mean? And you kind of see them perking up. Oh, jeepers, I've kind of been sprung, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's just one of those extra things that you've got to look out for, isn't it? We're quick to complain about road surfaces and whatever, but definitely the wandering car. Again, if you see it, I just give myself a lot more space. But what about 100%. Tailgating, Mark? What about people who are coming up a bit close behind you? I've had that that experience before, once or twice, where people are so close and you want to gesticulate, but sometimes it's just not worth it. But go on, what about tailgating and perhaps talk about road rage?
It's a tricky one, that aggressive drivers, there just seems to be more and more aggression on the road, and, being on the motorbike, you're super vulnerable. It's super tricky. A strategy is to give yourself more space, but if there's somebody driving up your clacker, then, the only way to increase the space is increase your following distance to the vehicle in the front. So, if something happens, you don't have to brake as sharply and be run over, if you like. But of course, to do that, you need to slow down, and often then that can aggravate the muppet that's tailgating you. So that's one issue. And then, like you said before, Michael, about reacting, I'm starting to see lots of videos of drivers knocking riders off their bike. It's just mind-boggling, some of the stuff out there. So, you think about that. So then, textbook, I guess, is, let them pass when it's safe. And, you have to think about, your pride's not worth a trip to the hospital. But personally, I just prefer to use my bike's agility, to zip away some way. So maybe that's, maybe I peel off, or maybe I overtake or something. Just use the agility of the bike. I don't feel that slowing down is a good idea when somebody, especially if see trucks and stuff do it too. So that's kind of my strategy, if you like.
Yeah, you're right. You don't want to aggravate them too much. Sometimes, If it's a bike, so if I see a bike coming up behind me, I'll just move and often wave them, just because we got to look after each other. And if someone wants to get by, they get by. Like you said, it's not affecting my journey time. Was lane drifting?
I guess a vehicle turning across your path or drifting into your lane, and that can happen in slow moving traffic, and sometimes it's just carelessness. Or just sometimes a lack of mirror or head checks.
What about, how can we protect ourselves?
Yeah, so I guess there you're thinking about blind spots. You're doing, if the driver doesn't do the shoulder check, then you're kind of leaving it up to them. So at least if you're trying to avoid the blind spot, that's one thing. Again, watching the front wheels of the car, they often give away the driver's intent. And then, watching for gaps in traffic, cars can't help themselves to jump into that kind of space, if you like.
Town and city riding particularly, we haven't touched on it too much in previous episodes, but are there any other driving behaviours that are a bit more apparent in city riding or driving?
Yeah, well, I guess the same with the last point, about changing lanes without the warning, and, especially if you're filtering or something like that. There's no indicator, no head check, just a sudden kind of swerve. And, as I pointed out before, the space, if there's a space, the car kind of can't help themselves. They have to get into that space, don't they? Even though they're only going to get to their destination a microsecond before you. So it's really, escape routes is one thing, giving yourself space. lane position with the visibility. That's another one. And then anticipating, if you have this kind of knowledge where, okay, there's a space that car's likely to kind of want to go in there, then that's one way to think about it. And then that kind of leads into we're talking about failure to yield, and that's one of the most frustrating experiences, on a junction or a roundabout. And it's really just about being predictable. Just do the best that we can, watching the mirrors and the body language and giving ourselves that positioning. That's kind of all you can do, and just pretend you're invisible sometimes. And that's not even leaning into the, people under the influence. Drugs and alcohol, they cause a lot of crashes, and, we might be sober and alert, but if the car, next to you is drugged, that's not a great thing. And I don't know about you, Michael, but I always avoid, riding late at night or the weekends, that type of thing. And, if you see somebody swerving or like that, you got to call the police. That's such a dangerous thing. And it's still happening, too often.
It's tempting to complain, isn't it? We're all keen to gesticulate now and again, right?
Yeah, especially on the socials. But we for sure drivers need to be better trained. They need to be more aware, and they need to be held accountable. And I know I can see people going to jail now. If they really do something wrong and they get the mobile phone, it's really quite serious. But waiting for that to happen, it won't keep us in one piece. And that's the whole thing with motorbikecoach.com. We teach riders to take ownership, not just of their ability, but the whole environment, warts and all. And, riding isn't just about skill. It's, there's mindset, perception, and anticipating the mistakes of others. And, these riders, I've met some really cool riders recently who train, mentally and physically. And that's been shown they'll ride longer and happier and safer. And I met this awesome guy, Sam, last week when I was training him. Just got a short reel here that I'll play, shows Sam's story. G'day folks, I'm here with Sam today, and we've been doing the defensive rider training, and we're down at Mount Cotton, which has got a pretty awesome, you can see the road is just like a normal road, but it's closed, and we've got the whole place to ourselves. So Sam, thanks for coming today. Can you tell us a bit about your sort of story, your journey, and why you came today?
Certainly. I've been riding for a number of years, and I have a passion to keep learning all the time as I'm going through life. It's a
growth mindset.
It's one of those things we should all do, and it's important, if for no other reason, but you owe it to your family and your friends
100%.
to be as safe as you can and as skillful. And you won't get that. You can do as much little training as you like at home, but you need professionals to have a look at you always when you're doing that, to fine-tune some things, or really do guide you along the way. But it's a great investment to come and do it, and you can't be in a better facility than Mount Cotton to be doing that. And the instructor's been brilliant all day, most tolerant.
It's somebody else, not me. But because Sam's got a growth mindset, his riding's at quite a high level. So that makes my job hard, because I've got to send him away better than what he came. Right. But I think it did. What do you think were the takeaways for you, Sam?
Certainly improvement in where vision should be, and also how to brake, emergency braking taken to its maximum level, employing the ABS, why it does, and that type of thing. I do quite a bit of that type of training quietly up where I live. But you can't do it in any seriousness out on the public streets. You really do need to be with an instructor and doing that. So it's a most valuable course to come and do.
I think we definitely optimise your emergency braking and at speed. We're doing a sort of higher speed here. But I mean, the standard was good from the start, but now we kind of got, worked on the progressiveness.
Yes.
Really interesting about pulling the clutch in. What was your kind of feeling on that?
Well, I suppose the important and the takeaway from that is disengage what's causing the issue in the first place is the speed you're travelling at. Disengage it and concentrate on the braking. It's just, if you're still if the engine's still revving, you're not going anywhere if a clutch is in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a takeaway.
And that was, it's fair to say that, you had the revs on probably 20%, 30% of the time.
Easily.
Accidentally,
easily.
of course.
Oh, yes.
So this is the whole point. Because we're doing this drill, we still get a surprise. And I find that 80% of the students that I coach have the throttle on when they're doing the emergency stops.
Oh, yes.
So that's why we pull the clutch in. So, that's one to remember, because not a lot of people teach that. And then I think the other thing was, for me, was, we did some corner avoidance drills with the safety bubble, and in the wet.
Certainly that just instills confidence. That technique and developing that skill base and what you should be looking out for.
Exactly,
and the fine control on the machine. That is very important. So,
well done. It was a pleasure teaching Sam. He's got the growth mindset. Asked loads of good questions, and went away probably maybe 2 or 3% better than what he came. So job.
I believe probably a lot more than that. But anyway,
too easy. Thanks so much, Sam.
A pleasure, mate.
Good
all
on
the
you.
best, and all the best for the future.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, very fit and healthy guy, but a veteran. I won't say his age, but yeah, he's a veteran rider. But just when I saw his riding at the start, I'm going, okay, because I'm assessing them and trying to find the low fruit, what do I need to teach these people? But he was at a really high level. And when I spoke to the guy, he's just been doing so much training, and there he's coming back. He's in his twilight years, and still values the training and still improves.
Mark, we've spoken a lot about enhancing risk awareness and driver behaviours, but do you want to sum up this episode a little bit?
Yeah, exactly, Michael. I guess we can't control the cars around us, but we can control how we ride through their chaos. Is one way to look at it. And of course, you won't learn everything in one video, so we encourage people to go to motorbikecoach.com for riding tips and more.
Yeah, sure. And we've got all the better riding episodes on the playlist, which again is there's a link to that in the description below or in the comment section below, and also available at BikeSocial. Mark, thank you for your insight. Go away and enjoy your evening. I've got the rest of my working day to crack on with. But actually, before you go, what can the ladies and gentlemen expect in episode 16?
16, yes. That another kind of mindset one. We're going to talk about Dunning-Kruger. So those guys are psychologists, won a Nobel Prize, and all will be revealed. But essentially, it's about how to supercharge your riding by understanding cognitive bias.
Fascinating. Another school-type lesson. But I'm looking forward to that one. There's always stuff to learn, isn't there? Mark, thank you again. We'll see you next time, mate.
No worries. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks also to Honda Motorcycles UK for supporting the series. Mark and I will be back next time. As you've just heard. In the meantime, don't forget to check out those other better riding episodes. And I've also got 3 more places that are of critical, that's not the right word, but utmost importance to your motorcycling. So firstly, search for Bennetts Bike Club, which is essentially a social media site just for us. We created it, and it's full of proper experts to answer proper motorcycle related questions. We've also got the Facebook group. So it's a private Facebook group. There's nearly 10,000 people in there at the moment. Again, all of like-minded. We turf out the riffraff and we just stick with all the good people like you and I. So that's called BikeSocial. Come and find us on Facebook. And finally, if you're not yet a BikeSocial member, then you can be. It's free of charge if you insure your motorcycle directly with Bennetts. If not, you can still pay up £6 a month, £60 a year, and become a BikeSocial member. And that entitles you to access over 200 different deals and offers and exclusives and discounts. Just search for BikeSocial membership. Thank you once again for being with us, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Honda Motorcycles are supporting this series because safety is one of their key business pillars, and their quest for safety inspires their innovations in products, technology, and education, which is why they're committed to achieving 0 traffic fatalities involving Honda mobility products worldwide by 2050.